Hi, I'm Brian Nash from How We Got Here Genealogy, and I'm here at my home in beautiful Prince Edward Island. It's August 2nd, 2023, and in this live cast today, I'm going to take you from Prince Edward Island to Cape Breton, where my ancestors from Scotland first landed, all the way over to Scotland, and I'm going to talk about an event that happened in the 1600s, an event that changed the history of Scotland, the United Kingdom, and might I say, the world. I'm just going to flip over this pork roast I'm smoking for my supper later today, and I'll be right with you as I head upstairs to my office to start today's How We Got Here Genealogy Happy Hour. Good day, eh? So it was a quick trip. I'm sorry I'm a little late. I actually had started broadcasting, but I didn't hit the start button twice, which is what I needed to do. So I apologize for those that were waiting for a little while. I thank you for joining me as always. And for you that are watching this on the replay, just put a comment in the down below and let me know that you're team replay. What I'm going to do is, as I normally do with these, at the end of it, I will be having a question and answer period where we can talk about the subject, or you can ask your questions about genealogy, and I'll try to answer them, and I'll try to assist you where I can. So let's get going with today's subject. Now, today's subject, I'm talking about Janet, or better known as Janet Geddes. And she was part of a movement that some say really started a big change in Scotland, and caused a lot of problems, led to multiple wars, which I'll get into a little later. I'm going to talk a little bit about why this subject is important to me as a genealogist, and also why is it important to me as a historian and as a Christian. In my last live stream, I talked about the two Margarets, the martyrs of Wigtown, and this happens a little earlier in the history of Scotland, but it's this particular event kicked off, like I said, a series of events that would eventually lead to what came to be known as the Killing Times, and the events that caused the martyrdom of the two Margarets and many others. So my personal connection to this is, I'm just going off memory here. It's, I believe, my eighth great grandfather is John Anderson. He was a theologian, and some say call him, if you look him up in Wikipedia, a controversialist. What basically was the controversy? He wrote a few things in his ministry. He was a tutor to John, the Duke of Argyll and Greenwich, and he was a minister in Dumbarton, Scotland. And he entered the controversy between the episcopacy and Presbyterianism. Episcopacy is, I might even be saying that wrong. Episcopacy is basically Episcopalianism, or for the greater understanding, Church of England. It's a Protestant church that has bishops, basically. It's a form of government. And he wrote a number of items. In 1710, he published a dialogue between a curate and a countryman. He followed up in 1711 with the second dialogue between the curate and the countryman respecting English service. And he later published The Countryman's Letter to the Curate, where he talks about the English liturgy and about the history that really behind it. And he really defends Presbyterianism. In fact, the work that he's best known for, and he continued to be known for, is the defense of church government, faith, worship, and spirit of Presbyterianism. This was published in 1714 and is a reply to a work entitled An Apology for Mr. Thomas Rind, or an account of the manner, how, and reasons for which he separated from the Presbyterian party and embraced the communion of the church. So this document is considered one of the greatest defenses of the Presbyterian system. So I have some family involvement in this controversy that later this period that became involved in this this sort of debate, which and change that was being forced upon Scotland. So I have some family that has some stakes in the whole thing, so to say. Now, just an interesting thing about John Anderson, his son was also a minister. His son was Reverend James Anderson. He was a minister of Roseneath, and that he would be my 7th great grandfather. I might be mixing up the numbers here. I apologize. I have to go back and look. But his son, who is not a direct ancestor of mine, was also named John Anderson. He was the founder of Anderson College in Glasgow. And Anderson College is now called the University of Strathclyde for you in Scotland or who are interested. And it was from the Glasgow area that my first ancestors in the Anderson family came from to go and reside in Cape Breton and take up the tasks that they had done over in Glasgow, and that is they were in the business of mining, miners and mine managers. And that was actually generally the role of my family for many years. My grandfather was probably one of the first ones in the line not to take up mining. Some of his brothers did. His father was a miner, his grandfather was a miner, and so on and so forth. Right back to the original Anderson and settlers in Cape Breton, and they had, like I said, been miners in Glasgow just previously. But 2 generations removed from them, we have John Anderson, who I was talking about. So let's get back to Janet Geddes. So a little bit about her. She was a Scottish market trader. So this was basically, she sold her wares. She was a craftswoman, trader, business person, and she is alleged to have thrown a stool at the head of the minister in St. Giles Cathedral in objection to the first public use of Scotland's revised version of the Book of Common Prayer, or it was the 1637 Scottish Prayer Book. The act is reputed to have sparked the riot that led to the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, which included the English Civil War. So, I'm going to try to summarize this kind of quickly and talk about it, and really talk about the importance to us today and what it means for us. So for those who do not know, the English Civil War was basically a religious war between a factor, let's call them the Commonwealth Party, because they eventually set up a government in the United Kingdom, well, in Great Britain, in England specifically, where the monarch was no longer the head of state. Oliver Cromwell, which most of you have probably heard about if you know anything at all about British history, he was the head of this government. The members of this movement were mostly Puritans. They would differ from the Presbyterians in some ways, but a lot of the same practices they held to. So what was happening, though, at this point was the Church of Scotland, which was the national church of the country of Scotland. Scotland was still considered an independent country at this point, though there was a common king of the British Isles, of the three kingdoms, the Kingdom of England, the Kingdom of Scotland, and the Kingdom of Ireland. So in 1633, Charles first came to St. Giles to have his Scottish coronation service using the full Anglican rites, accompanied by William Laud, who was the Bishop of Canterbury. In the years to follow, he began to consider ways of introducing Anglican-style services in Scotland. So the king arranged a commission to draw up a prayer book suitable for Scotland. In 1637, an Edinburgh printer produced the Book of Common Prayer and Administration of the Sacraments and other parts of divine service for the use of the Church of Scotland. So I'm just going to take it here. I'm just going to show you what that looks like. So this here is the Book of Common Prayer for Scotland. Let me see here. And as you can see, it's if you're familiar with Anglican services, pretty much that the Anglican Book of Common Prayer, just adapted. So the first use of the prayer book was in St. Giles on Sunday, the 23rd of July in 1637. This is what got me thinking about this topic. Was just a few days ago, was just a week and a half ago, a week and 3 days ago was July 23rd. So James Henry, the Dean of Edinburgh, began to read the collects. That's the part of the service, the prescribed service. So Geddes took her stool. Now, there's many discussions what this stool actually looked like. And basically, it sounds like it's a folding stool, and this would have been common for in places in churches that a lot of times they wouldn't have seating for everybody, especially people that were more common would kind of bring their own stools so they could sit. Now, I'm going to show you this. This is a sort of the illustration of her throwing the stool. There we go. You got a little bit of a picture there. I'm going to actually just remove my banner so you can't see it. So 1 second. Just going to take that off. So as you can see here, it looks like a well-constructed three-legged stool. There's some discussion what it actually looked like, but most likely it was a folding stool. Excuse me. Now, as she's said it, she's said to have yelled, "They'll give you kolik," and again, I'm not pronouncing this right. The one will ye fos fees that you say mass in my lug. It means devil may the devil cause you colic in your stomach. You false feet. Dare you say the mass in my ear. Now, this was just after the Protestant Reformation came to Scotland. It was basically only a few years past John Knox when the Scottish reformer brought Presbyterianism to Scotland, and there was still this disdain or hatred of a lot of things that would be seen as Catholic, at least amongst obviously the Protestant crowds, particularly Presbyterians. And so much of the English Anglican services come from Catholic traditions or found in them. It's very similar. Even in their structure of government, their liturgy. So it's basically Anglicanism was just seen as a kind of a cheaper knockoff of Catholicism and was not pure Christianity. So this started off a lot of rumbling within the congregation. They were shouting and abusing abuse at the minister, throwing Bible stools, sticks, and stones. And the phrase "Dare ye say mass in my lug," as being addressed to a gentleman in the congregation who murmured a dutiful response to the liturgy, getting thumped with a Bible for his pains, and describes Jenny as one of a number of waiting women who were paid to arrive early and sit on their folding stools to hold a place for the patrons. So at this, the actual police or the guards were summoned and they ejected the rioters. So they stayed outside and started hammering and pounding at the door, throwing stones at the window. And soon after, more serious rioting started to flow out into the streets. So the guards and the magistrates were basically cornered and besieged in the siege chambers, to the extent that it became necessary with the Edinburgh them to actually negotiate with the mob. So it appointed a committee known as tables to negotiate with the Privy Council. So what happened is King Charles turned down the table's demands for withdrawal of the Anglican liturgy, and more riots ensued, with talk of a civil war. This led to a widespread signing of the National Covenant in 1638. Now, I talked a little bit about the National Covenant, and in last week's video, we talked about this. So this is the document that basically people were signing as their covenant to one another and covenant to the church, covenant to God, to not see the king as head of the church, to not subject themselves to bishops. So with his defiance of any attempt to introduce innovations like a prayer book, that's one of the things in the covenant, that they wanted things to go to Parliament and the General Assembly of the Church. The General Assembly of the Church still happens in Presbyterian churches. The way it works, usually most Presbyterian churches have presbyteries, which are a set of local churches that all under one government, and those presbyteries, they report to a greater synod, which is a larger regional body. And the synods, when you have multiple synods, they would come together for the General Assembly. So in November that year, bishops and archbishops were formally expelled. So they kicked them out of the Church of Scotland, because it then established itself as a full Presbyterian church. Charles reacted by launching the Bishops' Wars, and this was the beginning of what they called the War of the Three Kingdoms. Again, the kingdoms of England, Scotland, and Ireland. So it's really hard to tell if Geddes is the one responsible for actually having started this. But there's not even necessarily proof that she existed, though there seems to be some definite information about her birth and death, whether this was the person that was involved in here. So in 1787, Robert Burns named his mare after Geddes and wrote amusingly about this faithful horse. There's a plaque in St. Giles Cathedral that in memory of Geddes, and it was paid for by Robert Halliday Gunning. So the Bishops' War were, again, basically a war that was started by King Charles the First. We're still on King Charles the First, and he basically, it's about the rule over the Church of Scotland, whether it be Episcopalian or Presbyterian. That though it was settled in November 1638, when they expelled all the bishops and established themselves as a Presbyterian church, it was still some 75 to 80 years later, still enough of a controversy. My ancestor, John Anderson, was writing about it and defending Presbyterianism over the Episcopalian church service. Why are these things important to you if maybe your ancestors aren't involved or you have nobody? It's an interesting thing when you're researching your history, if you have Scottish family, to find out sort of a little bit about them. Church meant a lot in Scotland. It was particularly after the Reformation. Also, in searching for records. It's good to know the background of your family, what side they fall on, because you'll be able to find where the records are. But when you start studying your family and understanding them, you'll see what what happened during this period, during the Reformation, during the Civil Wars, during the killing times, and on how that affected people's faith, their view of family, their view of government. Much of what we call modern democracies very similar to a Presbyterian church, based on having representatives represent you to a larger body of peers or equals, whether that be in Canada's case a House of Commons, or in the United States, you have your Congress and your Senate, where you have people that are elected from a regional body or regional area to represent you at this greater national assembly, where decisions are made. And it's really important to understand that the things that happen, the events that happened that led to this, the blood that was shed, the things that were necessarily to move on. As a result of this, there was an uprising of the Puritans, who held against similar beliefs to the Presbyterians, that wanted to dispose of the king's rule altogether, led by Oliver Cromwell. And this was definitely something that eventually led to that civil war in that time, when there was no king on the throne of England. And then it was restored. And later, Scotland would become united and be part of the United Kingdom, with the Acts of Union. So it's really important to understand that history, understand that perspective, but also think of yourself in today's day, that what we stand up for, what we believe, what we choose to fight for, and would we be brave enough to stand up for our convictions, to pick up our stools and throw it at the face of authority when we know they are doing something wrong or something against our beliefs? Now, I'm not saying that we need to riot or I'm not trying to incite violence, but standing up and speaking up when we see wrongdoings, when we see our government going the wrong way. How many of us will take the time to stand up in public and defend our faith, our values, even if we're not religious, the values that we have, the values that we hold, whether they be your values as, for me as a Canadian, or as the values of your country, your form of government. I see now we're in a similar situation. We have many places in the Western world, we have rules being set by leaders that are authoritarian. They might not call themselves king, but they want to reign as if they are. They want to arrest people. They would gladly, I'm sure, they would be the first people to be against the death penalty, would be the first ones to want to take those who do not agree with them and put them on the shores like the two Margarets, and let the waves wash over them until they got rid of them. We need to stand up. We need to be like Margarets. We need to be like Janet Geddes. These were strong women who had an understanding of faith, of family. They were standing up and protecting something that they held dearly, that they believed in. And the only thing that they were cited for wrong was for not agreeing with the authority. Many of the principles of democracy over the years in different Western cultures are based on freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to stand up and have your voice heard. And I just see too often that governments want to shut down our voices and keep us quiet. In Canada, we have a government that wants to control what Canadians watch on YouTube. If they did not feel my YouTube channel and my YouTube videos are Canadian enough for them, they will be able to make sure Canadians don't see them. If I don't agree with what they see as their definition of what is Canadian, I don't get a voice. And that's what democracy is about. This is what our ancestors, this is why I really want people to get researching their ancestry, researching their family, finding out what their family went through over the years, what they struggled with, to be able to live in the free society that we have now. The things they gave up, the things they fought for. These should be things we're fighting for, that we hold as values. Simple things as the right for a church to be able to govern itself without the imposition of the king's authority. During COVID, we were seeing that the government's authority was telling churches how to worship, how they should sing, how they should pray. Maybe they weren't putting the words, but they put limits, and they put limits on churches that were not anywhere else. They put limits on people assembling to disagree with them that they didn't put anywhere else. In Canada, our government went so far as to call out the Mounties, have them trample old ladies, have them threaten to freeze, and not just threaten, but some people actually froze, had their bank accounts froze, not because they did anything against the government, they just didn't agree. They supported an event that was challenging the government. And it's a sad time when I think of what our ancestors went through. My ancestors in Scotland, Ireland, your ancestors, wherever they came from, probably went through a lot to get to where they are now, your family is now, so that you could enjoy freedoms. And I see every day freedoms are being taken away from us. And it's been something that's been bothering me a long time. Is like I said, as I do this, I want people to understand history. Don't forget it. Don't sleep through history class. Invest yourself in it, because when you fail to understand history, you fail to see the signs, and you fail to see the warnings that are there. You fail to see the value of freedoms that we have and what people did to get those. Anyways, that's sort of my rant for this week. I hope you all that are watching enjoyed it. If you have any questions, I'm going to just quickly try to do my last call and see what you guys have. If you have a quick question or two, just plop it in the chat there, and we're going to do last call now.
Last call!
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time I need to announce it's last call at the bar.
Oh.
Okay, so this is the part of my live stream where I answer your questions, whether it's about today's topic, but anything you want to know about genealogy, what you need, you might want to know that can help you in searching your family, or just even researching the history of the areas of where your ancestors came from. I'm here to answer your questions. Ask them now. Okay. Well, thank you for all your questions today, and thank you everybody who tuned in live, and those of you that are watching on the replay. I want to thank you, and until next time, I'm trying a few different times. Today I just happened to be off today, and I wanted to try a mid-afternoon one to see if I would have any more viewers that tuning in. And I'm going to be experimenting. If there's a time that works best for you, tell me in the comments. Let me know when you'd like to tune in. If you've missed this, what times work good for you, and any questions, any subjects you want me to conquer, or maybe not conquer, but look at. Just let me know. Have a great day.